Hello everybody and welcome to CFO Conversations. I'm your host, Paula Kensington, and I have the great pleasure to welcome back Sue Rosen.
Hi,
Thanks
Paula.
for coming today. We're going to talk about difficult conversations, and I know it's probably going to send another fear up your spine about having those conversations that you really get the sweats about or you really don't like the thought of and keeps you up at night. But maybe we can give you some frameworks that are going to really help how to pace out those conversations. And I know that for myself, it's thinking about the elephant in the room, actually thinking about what is it that I want to achieve from that conversation? What's my objective, my outcome, my desired outcome? But also giving time and reflection to what I think that person that I'm going to have a difficult conversation with, what's their perceived outcome? How can I make that manageable, palatable for that other person? I think trying to bring a level of self-awareness that we've already spoken about. How do I bring that into a conversation that is difficult? So what have you found that's helped you in the past?
Yes, thanks, Paula. So I also have really struggled with this in the past. As a natural people pleaser, I have shied away from difficult conversations. And for me, one of the keys is to realise, to your point, that thinking about what the outcomes are can be very, very helpful, or what the consequences are of not having the conversation as well. Yeah. So when dealing with a difficult team member, for example, it's about bringing curiosity and compassion that we've talked about before to that conversation, but taking the courage to step into the conversation, because having that person underperforming in your team is having a wider impact on everything else that is happening. So sometimes understanding the broader impact of not having the conversation is actually what can help you find the courage to address the issue, or the elephant in the room, as you called it.
Yeah. I think what I found in experience for me, and when other people say to me, Paula, can you give me some tips to think about to have those difficult conversations? And it might be with staff members, or it might even be with clients. I've worked in a business where we had a lot of client interactions, and how to have a conversation with a client about something difficult. And I say to people, think about it in a 3-stage process about how deep you want to go into that conversation. So often we'll have the first piece about, you need to pay your invoices on time, or whatever the example is. But then what are they going to come back with that? Oh, well, your invoice isn't correct, or there's something wrong with it, which is why I've been delaying. So have the second, deeper piece of content or context, whatever it might be. Okay, so we've been down this path before, and that invoice is what you've signed up to. So trying to think about the levels, the 3 different things or pieces of content that you're going to actually have ready in your repertoire to have that conversation. And I think that helps me and helps others to feel more relaxed, because often you feel like a bit of the deer in the headlights. You've said something, someone else has come back to you, and you've got nothing. So, it's having the next conversation starter is helpful. Yeah.
Doing your preparation and thinking beforehand is enormously helpful. And a model that I have used that is based on 3 levels as well is around understanding that there is content to the conversation, which is this is what happened. And of course, understanding that content can be seen from 2 perspectives, my perspective and your perspective, and they might be different. We may have different viewpoints on what actually happened. Yep. The second layer of the conversation will be feelings or emotions, and those are there whether or not you explicitly acknowledge them. And so to be clear with yourself beforehand about how you're feeling can actually help you acknowledge that in the conversation, which can clear the air. Yeah. And then the third level, which is really the most challenging, is that understanding that difficult conversations often have a threat to our identity, which may be, if it's around a difficult salary conversation, or to your example of an example with a customer or a supplier, that this is a threat to my identity because it says perhaps I'm no longer competent. So that can be impacting how we're entering the conversation. And if you can prep by thinking about these different layers from your own perspective as well as the perspective of the other person, then you are set to be able to explore all angles, and then, as I said, go into the conversation willing to listen and understand the other person, as well as confidently put your own position forward. You will be much more likely to create the outcomes you're looking for.
Yeah, I think it's very important not to lose sight of what the outcome will be, because generally if you're having the conversation, you know what the outcome needs to look like. It's how you actually get there. But don't lose sight of that, and come back to it. So yes, you can be empathetic, yes, you can be feeling and caring, but you need to come back to the end point. But also I think it's important to make sure that you don't delay having those difficult conversations. They're not going to get any easier the longer you leave them.
They actually get much, much harder the longer you leave them.
Yeah, so we will leave you with that thought. Have those difficult conversations and be coming from a place of courage and knowledge. And love to hear what you think in the comments below. Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Paula.